Hello and welcome to the Film Yap podcast. Once again, I'm joined by Ben Sears, my colleague from the Indiana Film Journalists Association. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Chris, thanks again for having me.
Well, we thought it being early 2024, and I know we're all still getting used to that. It's as good a time as any for us to do our best of list of the year. I don't know if yours is actually like a top 10 or a top 15 or top 20. I actually once did a top 75 list when I was very, very enthusiastic about the year. But we can talk about our top tens and then just any others like ones that almost didn't make it in or disappointments or really whatever you want to talk about.
I always just do a top 10. I do have some honorable mentions, so yeah, we can do that.
All right, and I don't know if you want to start at the top, like from number ones and go to number 10, or try and build tension from 10 to one. Um, Maybe if you want to just to start, we can talk about just our assessment of the film year. I kind of like to do that, just to say like where I think the year 2023 in this case ranks. You know, I mean, I would say I thought it was an above average year for film. I did not have like that one film that just absolutely blew me away and was quite clearly my favorite. When I was going to make my top 10 list, there was probably about four to even five movies that I really felt like could compete for that number one. But there wasn't one favorite for me. But overall, I mean, I thought it was an impressive year, and that it was interesting. There was a lot of freshness. There was a lot of boldness. I saw a lot of movies that I was like, wow, I've never seen anyone try to do that before. So as a starting point, I thought it was a above average year for movies, like a B plus year.
Yeah, I would agree. I think 2022 had a lot more quality spaced out throughout the year. But there were a lot of like end of the year titles that I think were really good. I feel like around the first half, the end of the first half of the year, I was kind of struggling with like what were some of my favorites. And I think my end of the year list, I don't know if any of the films that were on my first half list ended up on the end of it. Maybe two of them. Um, but yeah, I think I've seen a lot of people say that this was like, I don't know, like an all-time great year for films. I don't know if I'd go that far.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was really interesting for the industry as far as like almost all of the blockbusters, the big like tentpole, the Marvels and the DCs and the big IP driven films almost all tanked. And so we kind of had to find new and interesting places to find good movies, and most of them delivered. So I'd say B plus is probably pretty good.
All right. Well, why don't I let you start? And I don't know. Did you want to just you usually people we do these things, we do them like 10 to 1 and build the tension. Do you want to just go the contra way and just go bam, here's my number one?
Well, so maybe this will help your answer, but I do my top 10 list a little differently.
Okay.
I have a movie of the year, and then I have a remaining nine, like nine runners up basically,
Uh-huh.
which I list in alphabetical order. So um yeah, I mean, I'm fine either way, however you want to do it.
Yeah, let's just go straight to the main event. Ben, what was your movie of the year?
Okay. So anyone that really knows me knows that I kind of had this movie kind of earmarked from the beginning since it was announced that it was coming out. And that's The Boy and the Heron from Hayao Miyazaki. Miyazaki is my favorite filmmaker, number one with a bullet. And I was very excited for this one, and it fully delivered for me. It's a really great animated adventure that kind of throws a lot of what Miyazaki has done really well throughout his career, and kind of sticks it all together while still making something brand new, at least to me. Um, uh, just a great adventure Just really inventive, and it's been, I feel like, forever since there's been a movie where I really didn't know what was going to happen from one minute to the next, and I really appreciated that about The Boy and the Heron.
No, that's
So
good. I like that one a lot too. It didn't make my list, but I mean, I'm always down for Miyazaki. I think this had been like his first film in about 10 years or so. Uh,
correct.
and
His quote unquote final film,
yeah, although
as
I
he's
think
done
that's what
many times before.
I think he's said that. He's like Quentin, he's the Japanese Quentin Tarantino. Quentin
Right.
Tarantino has been threatening to retire from movies for at least the last 20 years.
Right.
And personally, I'm ready for him to pull the trigger. So like I said, for me, I didn't really have a movie of the year. I really struggled with what to make number one, and I flipped it around several times. I ended up going with All of Us Strangers as my number one. A movie I do love, although when I was particularly my number two, three, and four, when we get to those, like if you'd asked me on a different week, I might have flipped it around a bit, and I still would be fine with any. But All of Us Strangers, small film still hasn't gotten into wide release. I'm hoping it will soon. Just a very empathetic film, very emotional about a lonely guy falls in love with a neighbor of his, but it's also sort of like this ghost story where he's having these ongoing conversations with his parents who have passed away. Um, and I admit, I am in my taste with movies in a lot of ways old fashioned. My primary engagement with movies is emotions, and if a film doesn't move me emotionally, I'm probably not going to be. I might respect the filmmaking, the aesthetics, the technique, the themes, anything. But if I don't feel like a real human connection to a movie, it's probably not going to be one I'm going to really go for. And this was probably the film that when I think about, I had the strongest emotional reaction to.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot from people, and I have nothing bad to say about that movie. I think if I had not watched it kind of in a screener haze before the end of award season, I would probably have rated it higher. But yeah, it's an enjoyable film. I liked it.
Yeah, and we should mention that when we're doing our awards, which the IFGA just did, that last month or so, it really is like a haze, like you say, because we're just watching. It's an absolute crunch time. We're watching movies that we haven't seen. The studios will suddenly inundate us with screeners. In a lot of cases, movies that they wouldn't let us see when they were actually coming out in theaters. Now they'll let us see them, or they're like the films like this that are just now coming and won't have a wide release until the next year. So yeah, I remember I'm not a big fan of people who like to track how many movies they've watched and broadcast to the world, but I did keep kind of a rough count, and I think over that last month before our awards, I watched right about 50 movies. Um, and I agree with you that sometimes I feel like I didn't appreciate a movie as much because it was like the third one I saw that day.
Yeah,
Uh, and yeah, that's sometimes not the ideal situation.
yeah, but yeah, I that's a good choice. I like that one.
Well, let's hear yours. I understand yours are not necessarily ranked 2 through 10, but in
Correct.
alphabetical. Let's hear your next one.
Yeah, so my first runner up, I guess, is the documentary 20 Days in Mariupol.
Yeah,
It's
film.
I always try to do at least one documentary on my list at the end of the year, and this was one that definitely stuck with me the most. It's about the early days of the war in Ukraine, and it's easily the hardest movie that I've ever sat through. There is just a lot of imagery and scenery that is just really hard to digest. Just seeing the worst aspects of humanity, and it's not like the documentaries about Syria, like the White Helmets or For Sama, where there is like a little bit of hope at the end. There really isn't much hope in this one, unfortunately, but that is exactly the point, because it's a very real documentary about these human rights violations and these travesties that are going on in Ukraine, and the things that these people have had to suffer through. And And then it also kind of tacks on how Russia is using the same footage to discredit what they're doing themselves. And it was just, it's a documentary that has really stuck with me since I saw it.
Yeah, great choice. I did not end up putting that on my list, although now that I'm realizing I probably should have. Maybe not in the top 10, but at least in that best of the rest. Probably, I would say the second best documentary I saw this past year without one. So, absolutely great choice. Really, the sort of documentary I appreciate that in that to me, I'm not a big fan of the new wave of documentaries that are like very opinionated to the point of, to me, they're more like political polemics than like observation. I like journalism, objective, observation type of things, and that's such a powerful example of that type. Number two on my list was The Holdovers. I very much considered this having that as my number one. I went back between, like I said, that top four or so. I really kind of went all around back and forth with. But Alexander Payne and Paul Giamatti reuniting. Uh, just a fantastic performance by Giamatti. I really hope it gets some Oscar and other awards recognition. Terrific newcomer, and just that 3-person cast just really terrifically. The way I said about it, it's a funny film, but a very bleak film, and yet there's like this sense of hope.
Mhm.
Like the Paul Giamatti character, he finally has hope for himself, and thus we have hope for him at the end. So that's on my list.
Yeah,
What's your
I like The Holdovers as well. I'm not as high on it as you or a lot of other critics, but I again, I really have nothing bad to say about it. I really like Paul Giamatti in that. Um, and I really enjoyed. I think we both saw it at Heartland, and it was a great theater experience because it was a sold out crowd, and there was several lines where uh you couldn't hear what was said after a big laugh line because there was so much laughter. It was a really great experience. So that's a good pick. So my next runner up is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, directed by Kelly Fremon Craig. Um, it's safe to say that this movie really just was not on my radar at all early in the year. I had heard that Rachel McAdams was good in it, but really nothing except for that. And I kind of saw it on a whim at the theater one night, I think in April, and was really just blown away by it. It's just such a warm and sincere coming of age film in a genre where things tend to be a little cynical sometimes. And I just really appreciated the way that Kelly Fremon Craig made this adaptation about, change, not only in change in your body, but change in mindset and social change. Just that and just incredible performances all around. Abby Ryder Forson, Rachel McAdams, I hope she gets some more awards recognition. Just really unexpected surprise, which I really enjoyed and has stuck with me since whenever I first saw it earlier in the year.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump my list a little bit. That is number 6 on my list. Just an incredible, as I say, a movie I had low hopes for. I just went, I'm like, oh, well, we're remaking this, 50-year-old Judy Blume book, which I had read as a kid. Um, and I was just expecting something to be very schmaltzy and conventional and staid and comfortable. And it's really a bold piece of filmmaking. I love how I mean, the mother character played by Rachel McAdams really isn't that big a figure in the book. And yet somehow they made this expanded out in some ways, it's her story as much as the child's.
Mm-hmm.
Just a fantastic film, and as you say, that filmmaker, I believe she made the Edge of 17 a few years ago, another great film about being an adolescent. So great pick.
Hmm.
So for my number three, I went with American Fiction. This is a film that I actually missed at Heartland. It was very much looking forward to and didn't get to see it until much later. Just an amazing debut by Cord Jefferson, the writer director, his first film behind the camera. It's hard to even believe that because it's such a mature vision of a film. And Jeffrey Wright, just spectacular. Another guy I really hope gets awards consideration, not just him. Uh, Sterling K. Brown, and I'm forgetting the main actress's name as well. Just an amazing cast all around. Such a human story, very satirical and smart and funny, and yet also isn't afraid to. It doesn't hold up its main characters like this perfect vessel of critic, who can critique the world, and he's also very flawed himself. Three-dimensional characters, and I think a very sharp satire and a very brave satire. I mean, honestly, to see a black filmmaker make that movie in 2023, I was impressed and surprised. The sort of thing I think could have gotten a lot of pushback, and maybe still will. I think it's actually just going to be going into wide release or wider release this week, so I'll be very curious to see what reception it gets.
Yeah, I like that one as well. I kind of wish that I had went into that one blind without knowing the premise, because I think I unfortunately I had read like what it was about and what the quote unquote twist was, and I kind of wish that I had known nothing going into it. So that's a good choice. Yeah.
Okay, let's go
Um,
with your next one.
so next up is Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. Um, I starting out in 2023, I kind of appreciated Wes Anderson. I wasn't really a big fan of his. I had only seen maybe a couple of his films. And this year or 2023, I kind of went deeper on his filmography and saw a lot more. There's still some that I have to see, but I really started to appreciate what he does, beyond just the surface level and the his very distinct aesthetics. And Asteroid City, I think, is one of his best films. It's got a great cast, including Jeffrey Wright, who has a really great moment midway through. Um, yeah, just a really great story about the very like nature of making art and what the meaning of making art is, and just a really dense, really complex kind of film that's also incredibly funny. I've seen it, I think, 3 times now, and I still think that it's really funny and really poignant. And yeah, so pleasantly surprised about Asteroid City.
Yeah,
Again, it still has kind of his trademark production design and cinematography, and all of his little quirks and stuff, but it still feels like something new from him.
yeah. For those that know me, I'm very up and down on Wes Anderson. I've loved a lot of his films. I actually couldn't stand a lot of his films. I will say I liked Asteroid City more than most over the last 10 years. Compared to some other ones, like Moonrise Kingdom, which I just loathe with a hot passion. But then other ones like the Darjeeling Unlimited that I really, really liked a lot. So I've been up and down on him. All right, for my number four, I picked a movie that I really loved, and not a lot of other people seem to see it or appreciate it, which was Dumb Money, starring Paul Dano as based on true story of the GameStop stock uh, imbroglio from a few years ago. Something I was like vaguely aware of it when it was going on, and it really dealt in it. And it was just a smart, funny, satirical movie. I thought it was like sort of the inheritor to like The Big Short from a few years ago. Another movie I love that's about this hot topic of like high finance that I don't think a lot of people care about, and yet it makes it a very human and relatable story. And pulls off the hat trick of two things that are very hard for a movie to do at the same time, to be very angry and yet also very funny.
Hmm. Yeah, that is unfortunately one that I'm one of those people who haven't seen it. There's a handful that I missed out on, and that one I think is at the top of my list. Because I really like Paul Dano, and it's a pretty stacked cast from what I remember. I like almost everyone that's in it, so I have no excuse. I'm part of the problem. Um,
Well,
and
look, even with us crunching at the end of the year, I still have a probably a dozen or more films that I meant to get to, but didn't. So you are hardly alone in that boat.
Yeah, I will watch it. I like your enthusiasm for it, so that is one thing that'll get me to watch it. So my next up is Bradley Cooper's A Star, or not, A Star Is Born, Maestro. I love A Star Is Born. But so I was really excited for Maestro. And I think as I watched it, I could tell like it was going to be a little polarizing. So I understand it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really liked it. It kind of uh does the opposite of what most biopics about musicians do, and focuses less on Leonard Bernstein's career and more on his relationships and you know the the nature of like what drove him. um and I really appreciate it. I think it's got a fantastic Bradley Cooper performance, a fantastic Carey Mulligan performance. I think that Bradley Cooper is even better than he was in A Star Is Born behind the camera. There's some really interesting flourishes that he does throughout that film, and I fell for it.
Yeah, I think that one's going to do a lot better in the awards cycle than people have expected. Because it's sort of got that classic Oscar pedigree to
Right.
it. It's a historical thing. It's about it's a great man or great woman story. It's in this gorgeous black and white cinematography. I respected the film a lot. I liked the film a lot. It just didn't quite rise to that top 10 level for me.
Yeah.
Um, Number five on my list was Rustin, another film that I felt kind of got lost in the shuffle, maybe because it's a Netflix movie. Did get a theatrical release, but not much of one. Did the award circuit. Coleman Domingo, as the namesake of the film, who was just sort of like this forgotten figure in the civil rights movement, because as they say, he was not the guy who stood in front of the microphone and made big speeches, but he was the guy who organized the event so that the Martin Luther Kings and other giants of history could be there to broadcast their voices. He's the sort of guy that, I mean, he was the real one who came up with the idea for the 1963 March on Washington, one of the most iconic moments in American history. And just a great exploration. I love movies like this where they show you history and they show you a side of history that maybe you haven't seen or haven't seen the whole story. And I think Coleman Domingo just gives an amazing performance that, again, I really hope he will get recognition when the Oscars and Golden Globes and all those the Critics' Choice Awards get announced.
Yeah. I Coleman Domingo is one of my favorite actors, so I'm really pulling for him for that. Yeah. My next runner up is Todd Haynes' May December. This is I don't know why, but I really didn't have much hype for this movie. I kind of, for lack of a better word, watched it out of obligation, and was really just blown away by it. I think it is like one of the most complex, most dense films of the year. I think there's so much going on a thematic level, on a story level, on performance level. I think Natalie Portman is incredible. Julianne Moore is great. Charles Melton is like one of the biggest breakout stars of the year. Um, and not to mention it's pretty funny at points. It's just a kind of a miracle of a tightrope, and it ended up just really digging underneath my skin for a while after I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, that one didn't do it so much for me. Great performances, of course, uh, from Natalie Portman and I'm blanking on the other actress's name.
Julianne
Uh,
Moore.
Thank you, Julianne Moore. I strangely have very much diverged from the crowd on this one. On my main problem with the movie was the Charlie Melton character, how it was written, how it was, I think, directed and played. I don't know. Maybe this is obviously just a it's me situation because it seems like everybody else has been very enthusiastic about him and his role in that movie. So it's just one that I'm gonna have to say I'm on the other side on this one. My number six, I won't belabor it, was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which we already talked about. My number seven was another movie that I was aware of when it came out. I want to say this was just a streaming film, which was Blackberry. This was literally one of the absolute last films I watched during my crunch of the awards crunch, and I was just blown away by it. Just a terrific story about the really a lot of the tools and the way the digital flow of information goes these days is based on portable devices and the BlackBerry. People forget before the iPhone, the BlackBerry was it. Texting and all that kind of stuff. And I love the background of the technological story, the egos, terrific performances by Jay Baruchel, one of those actors who's sort of been like the kid in my mind for forever, but he's in his 40s now, and this was kind of like his first, I really thought, grown-up role. And
Hmm.
Glenn Howerton was a powerhouse performance as the co-CEO, who is absolutely acknowledged by everyone, including himself, as being a humongous a-hole, and yet he just has something that makes him compelling. I'm not going to say charismatic, but he makes him compelling.
Yeah. That was, I think Blackberry is right on the edge of my top 10. I was really surprised by how much I liked it. There have been so many movies that have tried to emulate what The Social Network did way back in 2010, and I think this is one that actually kind of succeeds. Yeah, just Glenn Howerton was one of my favorite performances at the end of the year. I saw that movie back when it came out in like March or April, and it's still, I think, one of the best performances of the year. Yeah, that's a good pick. Um, so my next one is uh it's called Monster from Hirokazu Koreeda. I think this one still has not really been released here yet. But uh saw this one at Heartland, and I mean, I'm a big fan of Hirokazu Koreeda. I'll see pretty much anything he does these days, and I was still just really blown away by this one. I didn't really know anything about it going into it, other than the kind of plot structure was kind of like Rashomon esque, and it really just blew me away from the beginning. It's just a great look at truth and lies, and just how you kind of really don't know somebody until you really get to know them. Just really fantastic all around. Great performances from the kids, from the adults. Just, I mean, I am fully gonna acknowledge that I'm in the tank for Koreeda, but uh, even this one I loved. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of a Danish film from last year, Closer. That was actually my favorite film from last year.
Mhm.
There's like this really terrific, intimate exploration of the fraught relationship between two boys who are kind of like just on the edge of puberty and what that was like. Very intimate film. My number eight was The Color Purple, another film I was not expecting to go for. To me, like, I'm not a huge fan of the original film, the Steven Spielberg one, but it's still a very good film that launched tons of careers. There would be no Whoopi Goldberg. It's doubtful that, Oprah Winfrey would even be who she is without that. And other four folks in that. So I was like, it was like, why do we need this movie? And yet it's just amazing. It's just so full of color and obviously music and tragedy and joy. And I just felt so deeply for those characters, particularly the Fantasia Barrino as the main character. Another one of those actresses, thespians that I'm really hoping will get noticed when the awards cycle kicks into high gear here.
Yeah, that was one that I unfortunately have not seen yet. I was fully planning on watching it around Christmas time, but then I got COVID. That's another story. Um, so I will be eagerly watching that as soon as I can. I've heard almost nothing but good things. So
I'm very pleased to say it's been doing very well at the box office, despite not a ton of fanfare. So I'm glad people are turning out for it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, one that my next one is one that people definitely did turn out for, and that is Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Kind of a basic choice at this point, but I mean, what else can you say? It's one of the best theater going experiences I had last year, seeing it in 70 millimeter at the Indiana State Museum. Just an incredible kind of tightrope that is just top to bottom filled with great crafts, great performances, great directing. I mean, it's a 3 hour biopic that's mostly talking about theoretical physics and security clearances, and yet it's like one of the best thrillers of the year. So I don't know how he did it, but I love watching it. I love rewatching it. Just one of the best moments of the year.
Yeah, just the always the amazing technical polish of his films. It's not on my top 10 list, but it's one of those films I greatly respect. I do think it's one of those movies you probably need to see it several times to really appreciate it. I feel like, it's so big and enormous coming at you that it's almost like I almost felt like overwhelmed, like bowled over by it. And I have a feeling that, if as I see that film subsequent viewings in the times to come, I think I will come to appreciate it more. My number nine was my favorite documentary of the year. This also played at Heartland Film Festival. Was The Lionheart, which is a documentary that looks at the life and death of racer Dan Weldon, who I was not terribly familiar with. I mean, obviously being from Indianapolis and on that IndyCar circuit, had some familiarity with him. But what I really appreciated was that like movies like this tend to be very engaged in a lot of hagiography. It's like looking back, lionizing someone, which this film does, I think, rightly so. But what I really appreciate about it is it's also very much this contemporaneous story, looking at his widow and his two sons, who have in the years since continued to live and grow and grieve. And it's really look at their journey going forward as much it is looking back at the life of and career of Dan Weldon. So terrific documentary that I don't think has really gotten much of a release other than on the award circuit that I'm hoping more people will see.
Yeah, I unfortunately was not able to make that one at Heartland, and I think I'm like you. I don't really know much about Dan Weldon, other than what he did here at Indy. Um, and that one is an HBO documentary, right? But it hasn't come out on HBO Max yet, as far as I can tell.
I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't think it's gotten out just yet, but I'm hoping it will soon.
Okay. Yeah, I'm eagerly looking forward to that one. So my next one is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I'm a big fan of animation, and this 2023 was a great year for animated films in my opinion. And uh this one just really exceeded all of my expectations. I loved the first film, Into the Spider-Verse, from 2018, and this one just really up the ante in almost every regard. Just incredible animation styles, incredible storytelling, great voice for performances, great action, and I mean, really, the only thing that you can say against it is that it's kind of half of a two-part movie. But at least in my opinion, it feels like a fully formed uh, story, and it did enough for me, and I really enjoyed it. I've watched it, I think, going on 4 times now, and every time you see something new, which is just incredible experience.
Yeah, another film I respected. I will say that it's so visually fast paced that I do feel like you have to see it several times to really, appreciate it fully. I will say that that movie and its previous one and this one are some of the first movies that I've seen that made me feel old, and then I felt like I feel like I need a younger eyes and a younger brain to just to grasp the movie as it's going on because it's just so fast paced. My last one, another small film that I don't think has gotten really much of a release yet, but I hope will still is Memory. Another one that I encountered very, very late in my awards crunch. And this stars Jessica Chastain and Peter Sarsgaard, a very intimate two-person story about two very flawed and damaged people who have this encounter with each other that's really honestly traumatic and weird and creepy. And as I said, when I watched this movie, I almost turned it off. It was so off-putting. And then it takes this weird turn and sort of ambles off, and it becomes a relationship between these two people that we don't really see coming. Just a lovely little film. Like I say, one of those films that it's hard to watch, at least initially, but I think it's the fruits that it bears is very much worth it.
Yeah, that's another one that I still need to see. I've heard a lot of great things about Peter Sarsgaard's performance, and I will check it out sooner or later.
All right, and do we get all on your list, or do you have another one?
I have one more. Do we have enough time, or should we
Sure.
stop and start? Okay. So last up is a movie called The Taste of Things, which
Mhm.
I think also has not come out yet. Um, just I really didn't know much about it going into it, but I saw it at Heartland and was just really impressed on a storytelling level, on a craft level. It's just it may be like the sparsest film on my list in terms of narrative, but it has a lot to say about about romance and creating art, and just how those kinds of things are intertwined, and how making something for somebody else is kind of an act of love in itself. Just there's several sequences in that where nobody really talks, and the plot really doesn't develop, but it's still really captivating stuff. So really great cinematography, really great performances from Juliette Binoche and Benoit, I believe it's Magimel, and just really pleasant surprise from this one. It was a filmmaker that I'm not familiar with, and really I just wanted to see it because it got some good buzz at Cannes, and I'm really glad that I ended up seeing it. It's a movie that I would like to show to my parents and my friend who's a big foodie. It's a movie that I really want to see other people's reactions to.
Yeah, I like that one as well. As they say, a real feast for the senses. It's just such a sensuous film on multiple levels. It's a very obviously a fantastic film about food and family and togetherness. Um, and yeah, just one of those films that I think people from all sorts of walks of life can really enjoy. Well, that's great.
It's sorry, it's seeing it at Heartland, it was really kind of unique because it was in a big crowded theater, and every time some delicious food came out and they were preparing something, there was a lot of oohs and ahs and ums, and that was a unique experience that really helped my enjoyment of that film. Yeah.
Well, cool, great list. If I think I've got it right, we only had one film that we shared on both of our lists, which was "Are You There, God?" But that's okay. I mean, a lot of breadth and diversity of film choices there. I was interested that neither one of us had Poor Things or um, Killers of the Flower Moon on our lists, just because those have been kind of the runaway favorites of the critics groups so far. Of course, our own critics group, the IFJA, gave runaway awards to Poor Things. We gave it 7 awards, which is the most in the history, the 15-year history of the IFJA. So it's interesting that neither one of us. I did have that on my list of the best of the rest. But interesting that we had that, and then Killers of the Flower Moon is one that I am definitely on the outside looking in a film that I actively dislike, but thus far seems to be the film to beat in the awards race.
Yeah, I really liked Poor Things. I think the only negative that I'll say against it is that it went on for maybe 10 or 15, maybe 20 minutes too long. I don't think that movie needs to be 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever it is. Other than that, yeah, it's really great. Killers of the Flower Moon I loved. I was a big fan of the book that it's based on, so I kind of knew what was going to happen going into it, kind of beat for beat, and it still really impressed me. Yeah, that one is on my kind of honorable mention list as well. Also, neither of us had Barbie on the list. I noticed that.
Yeah, I had Barbie on my best of the rest list. It was kind of like Oppenheimer for me there, a film that I respected a lot. I appreciated its boldness, its filmmaking vision. Didn't quite rise to the level of best of the year. At least not the top 10. Maybe if I was doing like a top 25, I think both of those films would have been on there.
Yeah,
Another film I do think you probably need to see at least 3 times to really, really, truly grasp it and appreciate it.
yeah. I've seen it twice, and I still want to see it more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I find that I don't do a lot of rewatching of films from the past year. It's just because there's always this rush of wanting to see more, write more, create more about movies. And it's like, well, do I spend my time seeing a movie I haven't seen and writing about that or talking about that? Or do I spend that time rewatching a film that I've already seen? And pretty much seeing something new always wins that argument. So I unfortunately do not do a lot of rewatching of movies, at least during the current cycle.
yeah. The struggle is real.
It is
Um,
it's a place of privilege, but it is still something that I struggle with.
yeah. One that came in under the wire, well, over the wire, I guess it came in. I watched it after my list was published, but I really loved was Ferrari by Michael Mann. Um, I kind of heard mixed reactions to it, and I was really just impressed overall. I guess I'm a big fan of Michael Mann, so you can kind of uh uh take that with a grain of salt, but I was still really impressed with it overall.
He's probably the best director there is at juxtapositioning humans and machines slash hardware. There's
Yeah,
always sort of this like hard technology, guns, cars, boats, something that juxtaposition in his movies always seems to be there. Another a film I did appreciate, it, great looking film. Of course, Adam Driver, Mishawaka's own, could just continuing to grow and grow as an actor and impressing us and yeah, just someone I think we're keeping an eye on because I expect as I think he's leaving his 30s and going into his 40s. I expect to just continue to keep growing as an actor, and honestly, for him, I think he will win an Oscar. It's just a question of when, not if.
yeah. I hope so. Yeah, because he's got a great number of performances under his belt already.
And
And
great choices as an actor, like doing big movies, then doing very small, eclectic movies. Like the same year that I think he did the first of his Star Wars trilogy, I think he also made this tiny little film called Patterson.
Hmm.
this very spare movie about a poet who drives a bus, and like that's the whole movie, and yet it's just this beautiful little film and a wonderful performance. So yeah,
Yeah.
so so yeah, we were talking about our favorite films of the year, and we'll just end it on an Adam Driver appreciation, mini appreciation. So. Well,
Why
Ben,
not?
thanks for joining me again. I always enjoy doing these sort of things, and hopefully the folks out there like hearing us yammer about the movies.
Yeah. Thanks again. I appreciate it. Always a good time to talk, and always like yelling about my favorite films of the year.
All right, me too. Well, great. Have a great new year.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.